Hello, little learners. Are you ready to explore the exciting world of the letter E? Let's say E words together. E. Come on, let's go.
E is for egg. Can you say egg? Egg. E is for elephant. Can you say elephant? Elephant. E is for ear. Can you say ear? Ear. E is for eye. Can you say eye? Eye. E is for eat. Can you say eat? Eat. E is for eight. Can you say eight? Eight. E is for elf. Can you say elf? Elf. E is for earth. Can you say earth? Earth. E is for exit. Can you say exit? Exit. E is for elbow. Can you say elbow? Elbow. E is for envelope. Can you say envelope? Envelope. E is for engine. Can you say engine? Engine. E is for excited. Can you say excited? Excited. E is for eagle. Can you say eagle? Eagle. E is for eraser. Can you say eraser? Eraser. E is for empty. Can you say empty? Empty. E is for end. Can you say end? End. E is for enjoy. Can you say enjoy? Enjoy. E is for eggplant. Can you say eggplant? Eggplant. E is for emu. Can you say emu? Emu. E is for eel. Can you say eel? Eel. E is for eggshell. Can you say eggshell? Eggshell. E is for elevator. Can you say elevator? Elevator. E is for equal. Can you say equal? Equal. E is for early. Can you say early? Early. E is for enter. Can you say enter? Enter. E is for even. Can you say even? Even. E is for east. Can you say east? East. E is for 11. Can you say 11? 11. E is for eyeball. Can you say eyeball? Eyeball. E is for engineer. Can you say engineer? Engineer. E is for evening. Can you say evening? Evening. E is for explore. Can you say explore? Explore. E is for eyelash. Can you say eyelash? Eyelash. E is for earrings. Can you say earrings? Earrings. E is for easy. Can you say easy? Easy.
Great job, friends. You said so many E words. From eggs to elephants and even earrings, wow. Keep learning, keep smiling, and don't forget, E is for excellent. See you next time, bye-bye.